Late last night, an Iranian-made drone fired by an Iranian proxy, likely that would be Hezbollah because this was in Syria, killed one U.S. contractor, military contractor, and 3 other American soldiers are injured at least. We then responded with an attack on a base for that Iranian affiliate. There's very careful language here. We'll talk to Rick Grinnell and Mike Pompeo about that. They're going to be joining us in this first half hour of the broadcast, because they're not blaming directly Iran, but of course Hezbollah is controlled by Iran, and we know they're operating as well.
So this was a direct attack by an Iranian proxy on a U.S., this is what's interesting, on a U.S. base, or at least a U.S. affiliated base.
When you hear that there is a U.S. base in Syria, you might kind of be thinking an outpost like in Afghanistan with very much like CIA and secretive. This is not that. This is very official in the sense that we've got a U.S. flag flying. I mean, that's a base. That's a statement
It's called
base.
a coalition base, actually.
Which also provides a target. This base is right between Turkey and Iraq. And, of course, Iran is right there. So it's northeast Syria. It's probably a wake-up call to a lot of American people this morning that we're still so active there. But that is why we've heard reports show ISIS has been reconstituting. This is why we have those 900 individuals, a mixture of contractors and U.S. troops, is to make sure they aren't able to create a caliphate, even in the midst of what is a very complicated situation in Syria with Assad's regime, ISIS, and Iran involved. And, of course, the U.S. involved.
Yeah.
Russia was involved there as well.
No, this is the problem. Russia's been very involved. Our first book we wrote on the Middle
on their
East.
Side there.
After we wrote Rise of ISIS, the second book in the trilogy was Unholy Alliance. It was Russia, Syria, and Iran. Iran seems to be the constant in all of this, whether it's Iran or Hezbollah, and Iran proxy. And what a proxy war means is the Iranian Revolutionary Guard's not going in there necessarily themselves, but they train Hezbollah. These are terrorist organizations operating in the Middle East, and they have them go in and do their bidding. And it's called a proxy war.
This appeasement strategy from the Biden administration is not working. We've seen an increase of attacks. You can't look at the facts and not see that there has been Iranian and Iranian-backed groups increase in attacks since Joe Biden took office. Remember that one of the first things they tried to do was to immediately engage the Iranians. There was talk about paying them to come back to the table, giving away as much as they could just to get the Iranians back to negotiations. And that whole idea was pay them, keep them close, because then we might be able to monitor their nuclear weapons programs. These bad policies, these weak policies, have consequences.
In Secretary Austin's written statement, which was interesting to me that he added this point, because we weren't really seeing this in the news at all, that the attack followed a series of recent attacks against coalition forces in Syria by Iranian-affiliated groups. So things have been escalating in Syria. We just weren't really learning about that in the news. It wasn't being reported widely.
It doesn't surprise me. So those soldiers have been on the ground there for quite some time. This was the force that was leading the charge to take down the caliphate during our years there, when we needed the Americans on the ground to assist the indigenous forces at crushing ISIS, who was cutting people's heads off when President Obama was in office. The residual force that had remained there was attempting to secure that, provide a continued stability, and deter terrorism from that region. But the fact that this has heated up, the fact that the Iranians are now feeling more free to move about the cabin, right? It's consistent with the fact that the United States for months and months and months was sitting with the Iranians at the table, trying to figure out how to make sure the Iranians had a pathway to a nuclear weapon. The fact that they knew full well that they were likely to get the sanctions lifted on their regime. This all drives from a central thesis, which is that when you appease the Iranian, the world's largest state sponsor of terror that has killed hundreds of Americans and thousands of people across the world, when you appease them, they're going to take advantage of it, and we saw that today.
I think that we haven't paid as much attention because ISIS was destroyed. The leader was taken out by President Trump, and there has not been as much Islamic terror in the world.
Right.
There was a great partnership made in the Gulf states, but that partnership has now changed.
That's correct.
Because Saudi Arabia, upset with the Biden administration, and some of it is the war against their prince, some of it is the war against fossil fuel, has brokered an agreement with Iran, which is unheard of. And very unfortunate that the Biden administration
we're making with the Abraham Accords
making the world a more dangerous place for
put
Americans.
On hold. Yes,
again,
targeting America. Americans
killed. Dead.